if your head gets turned for every shiny thing that you see at a fitness show, you're going to be spending a lot of money and turning your members inside out on on all those different offerings.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Today, we're speaking with a fitness industry veteran who has spent the last 25 years leading some of the world's biggest fitness brands alongside Mike Balfour and Sir Richard Branson. She is passionate about enabling businesses to achieve excellence and financial success by developing extraordinary leaders. In this episode, she shares what all businesses can learn from Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how listening to people whilst having an eye for the details helped her to transform a bankrupt fitness chain into Deloitte's best company to work for. Her practical advice and no-nonsense wisdom exemplifies what's possible when you never stop learning and how to get comfortable doing the things that scare the hell out of you. So please welcome the CEO of Jets Fitness, Elaine Jobson, to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast.
So Elaine, thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast. As I said off camera, we've sort of bumped into each other many times over probably around about 20 years, I think. I remember sitting in several rooms with you talking about your newest and latest and greatest ventures. So it's good to be reconnected again.
Yeah, I think it's more than 20 years, to be honest, but we can go with 20.
Yeah, that's right. Don't make us sound too old. I was when I was doing some research, I was kind of reading, I was trying to find sort of older stuff rather than some of the new things and old pictures that I like to get. And this wasn't too old, but I kind of read something and I was chatting to my daughter because my daughter's a sort of she's only 10, but a bit of a young, ambitious sort of business girl at her age. She's got her own dog walking business. So I'm trying to sort of, influence her in the right way. But I was reading a thing that you did in an article where you said, when a job comes up, the women generally look, and if there's 10 sort of key attributes, a woman will look at it and say, well, they meet 7, which means they're not qualified and probably don't go for the job. And yet men, they'll kind of see 3 and think, oh, well, I'm going to go for it. And I just sort of wondered, I know you've got a young daughter as well, and I just wondered sort of how, or if you kind of influence her from a business perspective in any way, based on the fact that you've had a very successful business career.
Yeah, it's fascinating that, and I do wonder whether that is changing with the generations, because my daughter certainly would look at 3 and think she's perfectly qualified. So thankfully, I think that is changing. Oh, look, I think a lot of it's been to do with confidence, and I think women have to be pretty perfect to be able to achieve a goal or to get a role. So yeah, I think I might have just lost you.
No, I'm still there. So Annika should have mentioned that she's going to switch the cameras. Okay. When it comes onto you. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so like I say, I think with girls and with women, they think they need to be perfect. They think they have to have all the qualifications, meet all the criteria, but it really isn't the case. I think I've been pretty fortunate that I've had a lot of male role models in my life and in my career, and I kind of got taught that it's okay to get into a role not having a clue what you're doing and to kind of figure it out along the way. So yeah, but no, my daughter's definitely got the confidence now to try anything, and she feels, I think, comfortable and confident to give anything a go. So it's nice to see that in the youth.
Yeah, you seem to have been inspired, because as I said, even when I met you many years ago in some of your sort of, more, I guess, kind of junior roles, but you always seem to have something about you. You sort of had, you're always very sort of assertive and right, we're going to get this done. And like I say, I remember sitting in meetings where you would map out a vision. What were some of the sort of earlier influences you had? Was it some people in the family? Was it sort of brothers, sisters, fathers, or anything like that kind of gave you some of that, sort of help shape and mold you? Or
I don't think it was anybody as a typical kind of role model. I mean, it's actually quite shameful to say this, but really early on, because I was, hopefully the same as you, a bit of a child of the 80s. And I can remember, I don't know whether you can, but yeah, we became part of the European community. And I think that happened at quite a key time in my own life. I think I was about 15, 16 at the time. And I can remember, obviously, we had the Margaret Thatcher era, and I think as a female, I think, obviously she was quite a controversial figure, but she was pretty inspirational, and she really did have that attitude that not just women can do anything, but anybody can do anything, and almost adopting that American ideal of if you can dream it, you can have it. So I definitely got caught up in that, and I can remember her saying that we're part of the European Union, and it's important that we embrace being part of Europe. And I can remember thinking, right, that's it, I'm going to go and work overseas. And I went to work in France when I was 18, 19 years old, to learn the language, and I think that was really what spurred me on. And obviously I had no clue what I was doing in that role, and I couldn't speak the language when I went, and I think that resilience was just really born from there. And then I got to work for some pretty tough entrepreneurs early on in my career, and I think that also gave me a lot of resilience, and being able to have a lot of responsibility early on in those roles, where I had to figure it out, again, just gave me a lot of self-confidence, as much as it was hellish at the time. And it was incredibly scary. I was definitely influenced by a lot of that. And just some, I wouldn't even say great leadership, because some of them were very challenging people to work for, but it definitely instilled that confidence in me.
Yeah. Well, one of the things as well that you've done throughout your career is you've traveled. I guess you traveled from where you was originally born down to London, and you started going around the world, really. And doing that once myself, particularly with a family, I appreciate how difficult just moving is, let alone moving, setting up a new business, and then, like you did, trying to sort of either startups or turnarounds of big businesses. What do you think sort of gave you the desire to try and take on those kind of I guess crazy sort of goals, to do things like that?
Oh, it's a good question. You know what? It's hard to answer that for yourself, because you just get on and do it. But as I say, an early boss I had, really instilled in me this understanding that you will be limited by the size of your comfort zone. And, there's only so much you can kind of learn in one place, that you have to keep pushing yourself outside that comfort zone, because that's the only way you grow. So I can definitely kind of think back to times when I thought, okay, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I'm feeling quite comfortable in my role. It's probably time to move on. And that's usually just been, whether it by coincidence or fortune or whatever, maybe I created it, but these opportunities to advance my career and to move overseas and to do different things have just presented themselves at the exact right moment. And look, a lot of people would say no, don't get me wrong. Like when we moved from the UK to South Africa, South Africa back then in particular, it was a very dangerous place, still is. And, Jasmine, my daughter, was only 1 year old at that point. And it was only my ambition and desire to work for Virgin that made me say yes to that role and to move over to Cape Town. So, I think a lot of sensible people would have said no and said, it's not the kind of place to take a 1 year old daughter, especially as a female. And I say, obviously, Matthew, Ben, my husband, we are a mixed race family, and to go into South Africa at that point with a mixed race family was quite unusual. So yeah, it was just really, it's that kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. If it scares the hell out of you, it's probably a really good thing to do, because you're going to grow.
Yeah. What was it like, I guess, when, I suppose, leaving friends and family is difficult, and then sort of trying to rebuild that with your, a smaller family and your partner. What were some of the things that you, as when you made those big changes, what were some of the things that you focused on to kind of give you that, some sort of, I suppose, security, or I guess, I guess maybe security. What did you do to sort of like keep the wheels on when probably there was so much uncertainty going on around you? You're just basic stuff like a house and finding places to eat, and then building friendships and that. What did you do to sort of like maintain a level of normality while you were going through such a change?
Yeah, it's a good question. There was no normality. It was chaos often. I'll tell you what you have to be. You have to be a really good team. And, Ben and I have got quite complementary skills. And he is a phenomenal project manager. So we knew what our roles were. And, he was incredibly supportive. And there's no doubt about it. I couldn't have done what I've done and been able to move us around, 4 different continents if it wasn't for him. So, we're very clear on what our roles were whenever we arrive in a new country. And obviously we've done this, 4 times or so. The first thing we do is, it's like Maslow's hierarchy, which I know that, I use that a lot in my career. You have to get your foundation of, safety in place, which is, get the house sorted out, get the school sorted out or the childcare. Make sure that you've got all of those things in place. You've got your gym, you've got your workout, you've got your equipment. But don't get me wrong. I mean, we've arrived in countries and lived out of 2 suitcases for 3 or 4 months. Waiting for our stuff to arrive. And I think it really is. We are prepared to do what others are not prepared to do, and I'm very prepared to live with a level of discomfort and uncertainty that perhaps other people aren't. But yeah, it's never seamless, and it's certainly not perfect. it was pretty chaotic at times.
Yeah. And have you because you've obviously also got your relationship. What have you found to be as a couple? How have you managed to get that balance between being a driven businesswoman, a mother, a wife? How do you like you say, you've got your Maslow's hierarchy for your business and moving. Have you got some sort of hierarchy in terms of your relationship as well?
Yeah, people say, how have you managed to do all of this? Being a female, I have effectively done what the male would do. I've had the support of a husband who has, as I say, not only project managed this, but supported, emotionally supported, being the rock, being that consistent in the background. And, Ben's always been the one that, he knows the names of Jasmine's teachers. I never have a clue, It's like, he's the one that goes to pick her up at the gate. So we've had an absolute role reversal, and, I think that's the challenge often for couples, especially if the woman wants to be in career. There's a practicality that comes with this of it's really hard for you both to be dry and to have the balance. I'm sure there are couples out there that can do that. But for us personally, it's worked really quite harmoniously because we understood what each other's roles were. And it just so happens that mine has been more of the career and more of driving that forward. That I've never had to worry. I've never had to be too concerned about getting home to cook a dinner or to, who's going to look after my daughter if I'm going to be traveling internationally for that weekend. I've always known and had that comfort that Ben's always going to be there and be that person. And look, don't get me wrong, he's had his own career, as you know. He's a great life coach, and he does a lot of corporate events, etc., with his firewalking. But that's always been fitted in around what my role, mine being, I guess, the focal career amongst us. So yeah, but massive teamwork,
Yeah, it's not easy, I guess. It's not easy in normal situations. I suppose, let alone when you're trying to sort of balance everything else as well. One of the things I know you're very passionate about, and I believe you've sort of been involved in a book as well, is leadership. And I guess at the moment, it's probably a really important thing because with everything that's going on in the world with the pandemic, I guess, leaders you really get to see true leadership in my experience. So what are some of the important things that you've found of leading an enormous business really through this sort of pandemic? What are some of the key lessons that you've learned, and some of the things that you've really had to I guess focus on more than anything else during that period?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's in times of adversity that leadership really shows up. And you know, and it also presents an opportunity for you as a leader to showcase yourself. You know, if you think about the likes of you know, even the likes of, you know, Winston Churchill wasn't really known until we had the Second World War, and you know, Rudy Giuliani wasn't really that well known, or you know, as a leader until he, you know, they had the you know, the Twin Tower disaster. So it's you know, it really is, you know, whatever your leadership is, whether it be good or perhaps not so good, that's going to be amplified in these kind of situations. So, like for me personally, you don't think about your leadership when you go through something like the pandemic. And, you know, I know that every single, you know, fitness industry leader out there would have had a really quite challenging time of it. Obviously, you know, the UK in particular has had it tough. But, you know, there was that moment where we closed, you know, every single gym. I think we had 12 hours to, you know, notice to close down all our clubs. And you know, that you just get on with it, don't you? You just get through, and you don't really think about leadership. You're just getting the job done. But then you had that moment when, you know, everything's closed and everything's done, and everything just kind of fell into silence and goes quiet, and you have that moment of kind of introspection and been able to think about what's just happened. And I think in that moment, you know, what I was, you know, my emotions were probably being really proud, because, you know, I guess it was just years. When I've been at Jets now for 8 years, and, you know, I think what we did through that period is we effectively cashed in on everything that had been created before it. You know, we invest a lot into the culture. We invest a lot into our people. We have, you know, deep levels of trust in the organization. And, you know, we're a franchise organization as well. And, you know, our relationship with our business owners was really solid. And I think what happened was, you know, that actually enabled us to be very fast through that, to be able to, you know, to kind of have that trust in place that they, you know, they just really followed what we're asking them to do. And they, yeah, the fact that I think that it's just really for trust for me from a leadership perspective, that, you know, they kind of, I won't say blindly followed us, because that makes it sound like they weren't considering it, but they just trusted that we had this thing, and you know, they followed when it really mattered, and allowed us to still retain what was important for us as an organization. You know, Jets is we consider ourselves what we call a good profit business, and you know, we do right by our customer, we do right by our people, and we were able to you know, to go through the pandemic, making the decisions that were right, you know, consistent with our values and consistent with our purpose. So yeah, look, I'd say from a leader's perspective, I was really proud of my team and, you know, the owners and the whole organization of how they handled it.
What does being a leader mean to you, Elaine? And has that sort of, I guess, view of it changed from when you were back at the Fitness First days to where you are now? Has there been any changes in your view on being a leader?
Without a doubt, you know, it's you know, I do a bit of speaking on leadership, and you know, the thing that we have to always remember, and is one of my favorite sayings, is about, you know, as a leader, it's important that you put your leadership lessons on a pedestal. You know, all the lessons that you're experiencing, you know, that make you a better leader, you know, those lessons are the things that can be taught to others. So, you know, when I think about my own career, and obviously, you know, it's been, you know, near on 30 years of being led by, you know, good, bad, and ugly leaders myself, and every one of them has given me these incredibly valuable lessons that, you know, I've just kind of absorbed in, and then I've gone and taught other people that, you know, my own team, those lessons. So for me, you know, I'd like to always stay a humble student of leadership. You know, you're never the complete deal, and it's never an end. It's always going to be that journey. And, you know, all I've had, I believe, is, you know, almost 30 years of learning how to do leadership. So, you know, my tool bag's pretty full, but it will never be totally full. You know, there'll always be things that you can learn. So I guess that humble approach is what I'd like to believe I have, and that, you know, I'm always looking to learn more lessons of leadership and to be able to hone the skill further. So, you know, we're all on that journey, hey?
What would you say are some of your strengths as a leader, and the areas where you would sort of hire or build a team around, around those areas where you're probably not sort of, totally rounded. Like you say, I guess we're all kind of different in other ways, but what would be those areas of your sort of strengths and weaknesses from that perspective?
Yeah, look, my strengths by far are finding really great people to work for me. So that's that is my strength, because I think I'm pretty down to earth, and I don't believe I have a big ego with these things. I'm more than happy to find people that excel at not just my own weaknesses, but whatever the organization needs, and to give them the support. And I'm always saying to my own team, my job is to just remove obstacles for you. That's all I do. Is I just think, you're great at what you do. How do I help you do more of that? How do I help you kind of your flywheel go faster so that you can do it even better? So that for me is my role as a leader, and I think I'm good at that. I'm good at finding great people, getting them in the right spots, being able to create environments that they can do that really, really well, give them a lot of trust and give them a lot of support to do it. So yeah, I think that's it. Of course, we've all got our strengths and weaknesses, and I think you're always looking to build a team of people around you that aren't just like you. We do an awful lot of personality profiling in JETS. Every single person, doesn't matter whether you're a club manager or you're coming in at a senior level, everybody gets profiled, and we talk about those a lot. And we're always looking to build teams that obviously represent different types of personalities and different types of skills. So we do it on a much more conscious level. It's not left to chance. But yeah, I'd say I'm a generalist. I'm reasonably good at many things. But you definitely need experts in certain roles. So I'm good at finding really good experts and keeping them happy.
And with that's an interesting point you mentioned there about sort of keeping people, because you've gone from, as I said, UK to you've been in Asia, you've been in South Africa, and you must find these sort of, I guess, these really key people that you've developed deep relationships that form part of your team. When you're going into other businesses that I guess are probably only related as they're part of the fitness space, how do you what do you do when you're kind of rebuilding a team? Do you sort of try and sort of look for some of those people that you think, look, you could be great here, or do you sort of look for someone that's got some of those characteristics within the market, or a combination of both? Because it's something that I myself, and I know a lot of people do as businesses expand. You have those people and you just gel with, and it's like, well, I wish I could kind of get that person. So what's your plan around that sort of the key team members?
Yeah. Oh, look, I have got a reputation for collecting people and taking them around the world with me. So it's when I think about when I went to Malaysia, 3 of my 5 senior team had come, had worked with me previously in different countries. So, like when especially at the executive level, at that senior level, trust is a big thing, and obviously understanding people is a really important thing. So, I do, I guess, prefer to go, with people I know. And especially when you're moving countries, because it's stressful enough and it's challenging enough to set up a new business or run a different business. There's a lot to learn. So to work with a bunch of people that you trust gives you a lot of an advantage. So it's I think it's building a team of whatever the roles needed in that country. But to be honest with you, it's there are things that I look for in people which I won't compromise on. And when you have it, they're quite difficult to find. Say trust is a big thing for me, and it's that deep trust that you understand what people will do. And obviously, the trust is important to me because I like to let people get on with it, and I don't need to be involved in every decision, and there's no way that I can move at speed if I am. So I'm looking for those people that have the skill, that have a proven skill and ability, but as I say, that I can trust. So I look, my team that I have here, they've worked with me for, most of them have been here for 8 years with me. So I tend to keep people for a very long time. we've got, I've got a Durkee who works with me here. He has worked with me for the last, on and off 15 years. He was working with me back in South Africa, and now he's running a different business for me here. So as I say, I like to collect people, and when people are great, I'll hang on to them and I'll do whatever I can to have them work for me.
Yeah, you've also worked for some great entrepreneurs. Richard Branson would probably be the one that's most known to many people. What was that like, and what would probably be one of the big lessons that you've learned from not through, I guess, sort of reading, but through actually sort of interacting within a business? What would be one of the sort of big stories or lessons that you learned from him?
Oh goodness, yeah. Oh look, Richard owned, with Virgin Active in South Africa. Obviously, he took that company out of liquidation. I don't know whether you remember the old Health and Racket. So when Richard actually acquired that company, he obviously did it for the great reasons, and off the request of Nelson Mandela, he was famously called Richard up. I don't know whether you know that story, but he called up Richard and asked him whether he would be interested in owning that business, which was just about to go from liquidation into closure. And when Richard agreed to buy that company, obviously he did that because he wanted to save 5,500 jobs and 700,000 members from losing their gyms. And that was obviously many, many years ago. But what happened was, what had created that company to get into such serious trouble was a lot to do with bad culture and bad leadership. And I think the first lesson I learned was that, when I was taken on as the chief operating officer to go and help turn this company around, and it wasn't so much turning it around from a performance point of view, it was turning it around from a cultural point of view. It wasn't really a virgin company at that point. It was kind of like, it's still a lot of what it was before was still living on, and it wasn't culturally aligned with what a virgin organization should be. So Richard was keen to kind of, turn it into a true virgin company, and I was one of the people that helped do that. So the first thing is to learn that just because you acquire a company and you put your logo over the door and you put everybody in a Virgin uniform does not mean that it becomes a Virgin company. Culture and brand are two very, very different things. And your brand can't create a culture. Leadership creates the culture. So it was only really, myself and a few others in that leadership team that were able to give the organization the permission to be a Virgin organization and to obviously start to recruit in the kind of people that understood what that looked like. We started to get some traction. So, that was a lesson that I learned. And I wouldn't say Richard taught me that lesson, but the thing that Richard taught me more than anything was that this whole, very simple concept that happy people equals happy customer. That we learned that kind of the hard way. And this is where we kind of understood about Maslow's hierarchy, because when I first arrived at Virgin Active in South Africa, and we were kind of mandated to help turn this culture around, and it was pretty shoddy, the culture before. There was practices going on in that organization that, and I'm talking about many years ago, so not as it is today, but there was crazy things happening, like club managers had budgets for doing lie detector testing on their people. This is the kind of the lack of trust that was instilled into the organization. We had these at the head office, they had these 2 lifts, and everyone would crowd into the foyer in the morning, and one lift only went up to 5th floor, which was the executive floor, and all the other workers had to get in and wait for hours trying to get into to all the other floors. It was all of these kind of symbols of bad culture and bad leadership that were, that weren't conducive with being Virgin, that we just had to slowly take out. But the biggest one of all was a situation when we were trying to do lots of different initiatives to get a cultural change. We're doing it all the usual Virgin stuff, putting in the foosball tables and giving them free breakfast and, birthday off and all of those kind of things. But nothing was really changing the way that people felt. We were doing a lot of the kind of, satisfaction surveys and team surveys, and they really wasn't changing we weren't moving the dial on the culture and the happiness of the people. So it was driving me insane, to be honest. And I was like, what else can we do? We're throwing the kitchen sink at this thing. So So I did what I always do, and you know me. I come from the gym floor. I don't come from I didn't do an MBA in fitness management. I worked my way up from a gym instructor to a sales consultant to a club manager. I did all of that. So I did what I always do, and I went back to the floor, and I worked in one of the gyms with the club manager, and I just wanted to witness, what is it, that I'm missing here. And it was actually on one of those shifts that we had one of our maintenance guys who'd actually had an accident, and he'd accidentally stabbed his arm, his forearm, with a screwdriver, and he'd gashed his arm. And I'm a little bit squeamish, so this guy's kind of coming up to me and the club manager and saying, I need to get this fixed. So we shipped him off to the hospital to get some stitches. And it was actually why he went to the hospital. That was all great. And then about 2-3 days later, actually, the club was downstairs from our head office, and I went down to say, like, is he okay? How did things go? And I spoke to the club manager. She said, I haven't seen him since. He hasn't been back into the club. So I said, we better go and find him and make sure that he's okay. And we eventually found him in the hospital, and he'd been taken through into intensive care because he'd actually gone in and he'd been waiting for so long in the waiting room of this hospital to be seen that septicemia had gone into his wound, and he'd got gangrene, and he'd had his arm amputated from the elbow down.
Oh, wow.
It's horrific. So, and I just can't believe it happened on my shift. It's like I was there. I saw this take place. So it was that moment that I was like, oh my God, like, this is a different country. I'm not in England anymore. This is an environment where these things can happen. And I kind of got the team together in the club, and I said, just talk me through this. How did that happen? Why did he not get seen? Why was he waiting so long? And I said, oh, it's simple. I said that we don't have medical aid. We have no access to medical help, and if we go to the hospital, we are last seen because all the people with private medical insurance go ahead of us. So it's I was saying, well, what's medical aid? I kind of heard about it, and they said, oh no, it's not like a Bupa. It's not like in the UK where only executives get private medical insurance. It's something that most big companies provide to their people, which gives them access to a GP and access to basic meds. And at that point in South Africa, we had a lot of problems with AIDS and TB. We were losing a couple of people a month to AIDS and TB of our own staff. And so you can imagine the fear that it was living in all our people. For 5,500 people that were working in Virgin at the time, they were all terrified of getting sick because they couldn't access these basic medical care and medicines. So it was at that point that we kind of were asking the question, why is this not already previous leadership had not really cared about the people enough to put it in, and through the acquisition it hadn't really been thought about. It wasn't a normal thing to do, is to put private medical insurance across the whole organization. So but yeah, anyway, long story short, as soon as we understood this, we were able to put medical aid in place, and as soon as that happened, it was radical. The happiness of the people just exponentially increased, and all of the other initiatives started to take traction. And that's what really taught me about Maslow. It's the fact that if people don't feel safe and secure, you can't motivate them any higher than that. And if they're coming into work every day fearful that if they get sick, they're not going to be able to earn money to support their family, and often these guys were living in townships, there's no way that you're going to be able to, a foosball table is not going to make a damn bit of difference when they're fearful for their lives. So that was a great learning for me. And as I say, that kind of spoke back to Richard's advice in the world, which is, have your people happy and you'll have your customer happy. Because as soon as we had that and we could start to build out the culture, then our net promoter score, which is a way that we were measuring our members' happiness, just went through the roof. I mean, when we first started, I think our net promoter score was about 34%. And when I left Virgin, we just won the Deloitte Best Company to Work For, and our NPS score was way above 70%. So that, that was quite a radical change. But I'll always remember that it doesn't matter about anything else, but your people have to feel safe. And yeah. I appreciate that's South Africa, and that's a bit of a different environment. But even in Australia, I take that message in, and I think about what do my people need to feel safe here, and even small things, like uniform. One thing we used to do at Virgin was, they had bright red uniforms like this, and then if anybody started new in the organization, it took us ages to get the uniform, so we'd have them dressed in black because everyone had black pants and a black shirt at home. So we said, well, just come in dressed in black, and then when your uniform comes, you can have that. But you could imagine it was like playing for the All Blacks and coming onto the pitch in white. It was horrendous. That we'd have these people feeling unsafe because they were the new person, wearing a different color to everybody else. So these are the small things that we call that culture hacking now, where you just see these opportunities to make a radical statement around culture and making people feel good about where they work.
You say it's small things, but I guess it's something that maybe many people wouldn't have even recognized, and maybe even had that accident not happened, who knows what would have happened there. But I guess it was, and from what I understand, it was quite a significant investment for the organization as well. It weren't just like a few dollars. It was a significant amount of money, wasn't it, to put that in?
Yeah, if my memory serves me, I think it's about 7 million. Yeah.
Right. So it was a small thing, but it was a big thing. So with that, and you talk about Maslow, and I've read about that over the years, and I understand the sort of the base level. How after learning that lesson, did you sort of connect the dots as it relates to the Maslow's hierarchy, and then went on to sort of look at other areas that would be relevant, or was I guess how did that obviously must have had a big impact in your career in terms of how you look at things going forward. Tell me about what that was and how that related to the Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think obviously I was aware of the model of Maslow's hierarchy prior to going to South Africa, but I think it just all kind of connected for me, all fell into place when I understood. It wasn't even the fact that we put the medical aid in place. It was afterwards, because suddenly, as I say, the happiness levels of the customer and the people was going, like this. And then you kind of stop and think, well, what's happening here? And why are we getting such great results? Well, of course it is. It's because, they're now feeling safe. And even that messaging was coming back from the people to say, thank you so much for putting this in. It's made a radical difference to our lives. I can now, if I have a cold and I don't feel so good, I'll go to the doctor. Whereas in the past, they weren't doing that because they were so afraid of going to the doctor and being told that they had something like TB, because if they were told, then they would have to stop working. So it really did have a meaningful change to people's lives. And I think it was such a radical example that it taught me and reminded me of what we all got taught in our studies, in marketing studies around Maslow and people's happiness, that that's what it takes. And human beings are human beings, and I do talk about this to people that because I have lived in different continents, whether it be Asia or Australasia or the UK or Africa. Humans are humans. It doesn't matter where you go. Humans need the exact same thing. They might be on different parts of that Maslow. So, some aren't experienced what it's like to buy a Gucci handbag, but they all need the same thing, and they all need to be safe and secure, to have certainty, to be able to develop and grow, and to be able to contribute back to something bigger than themselves. And that's what Maslow's hierarchy is all about. So it was only really at that point that I started to build it as a strategic model. So we actually put at the top that we wanted to be the kind of world's most loved gym, and that was going to be measured by the happiness of our customers and the happiness of our people. And then we were able to break it down strategically to say, okay, well, safety and security, we call that brilliant basics. That means that we're going to do everything we can to make our people feel safe. And that was everything from setting expectations with everybody as part of a discipline, making sure that everybody knew how they're getting paid, making sure they knew, when they start, being inducted, having hard skills training. So we were able to detail out the strategy of that. And they would spend a full year taking care of that and putting it in place. And then we kind of go, okay, we've got all the systems in place to have people feel safe and secure. Now let's move on to the next one, which, was the feeling of belonging. How do we have people feel they belong in, that they can compete? well, there's a whole nother set of strategies to do that. Well, let's make sure that people are connected, that they have a mentor or they have a buddy if they first start. Let's make sure that they have that everybody knows a little bit about them when they first come into the organization. Let's make sure that they have the opportunity to see how their performance benchmarks against everybody else. So as I say, there was hundreds of different things that we did in those strategies, but and eventually you kind of got to the top of going, okay, well, how do we make sure that they feel that they can contribute and actually be a part of this whole brand? And so we'd have our kind of longer term team members doing things like, they would help us design the gyms, they would give us their ideas, they would participate in innovation, and they would help train others, So as I say, Maslow's was kind of stripped down and actually built back up as a strategy for achieving this vision of being, the world's most loved gym. And that's how we did it. And so, the measures we had measures in place for measuring that love, and net promoter score was one, and team promoter score was another, and usage, and how many times our members used us, because we felt that was a good measure about how much they loved us if they came and used us, and how long they would choose to stay as a member, and all those things. And I've done the exact same thing at Jet. That's what we've been doing for the last few years of building up the same kind of metrics.
And the Virgin business and Jets, they're very different in a number of ways, but both large organisations and with a lot of people there. I know in between that, I came out. I think I actually met you in something like Malaysia or Indonesia when you was at Jatomi, which was it was a startup, very, very different business, and I guess many different challenges. How did that that system that you developed or strategy you developed relate to kind of your experience when you was at Jatomi?
Yeah, I think it's in some ways it's easier, because when you're building a business from scratch, you can get all of that in from day one. So in some ways that was more fluid to do, and you've always got to appreciate the culture that you're in. It's got to be culturally sympathetic to what's the right way. So you can't just cookie cutter take it from one country and lay it into another. But there's a real service and hospitality culture within Asia. So in some ways it was just easier, to make that happen. And I think we had the exact same approach. We invested a lot in our people. Our people were great. That equally helped us, to build a really good reputation on delivering great service, which I think at the time separated us out from a lot of the competitors, because, as I say, that's not necessarily something that had culturally been created in some of our competitors. But yeah, it was the exact same thing. The example about how the dog has evolved. It's still 98% wolf. It's the 2%. It's the 2% difference which gives them, big ears, or one bigger or smaller than the other, or one fluffy and one not. It's not about the 2%, it's about the 98%, which is still wolf. And it's the same, it doesn't matter whether somebody's South African or Malaysian or Australian, human is a human. So they have the same things which are important.
Yeah. What was some of the big lessons that you got from Jatomi? Because you were very instrumental in Fitness First and working for Mike there, and then almost competing with them then in Asia, where they were probably one of your biggest competitors, and maybe even Virgin. I'm not sure, but what was that like, being, I guess, small fish, big competition, knowing a lot about who you was going up against? How did you, as the sort of CEO, how did you sort of set out your strategy, and what were some of the key lessons you learned from that experience?
Yeah, it's useful, isn't it, knowing your competition so well. Fitness First, obviously, I was really early on at Fitness First in the UK. So, and I worked very closely with Mike. So I knew the DNA. I was 10 years in Fitness First myself, so I knew that animal, and obviously I knew, Simon and Mike, who developed out Fitness First in Asia. And obviously Mike is now working for Jets again. So, that business I knew immensely, but I also knew what the opportunity was, because, he'd always been the strategy for Fitness First to be quite premium in Malaysia and in Asia. And I think, that was great. And they were serving that part of the market really, really well. But there was such an emerging middle class coming into Asia that couldn't quite yet afford the fitness first, but they could definitely afford a gym for the first time. So it wasn't particularly that we were going up against fitness first. We were just looking at the market and going, okay, well, there's no point in us scrapping over the same people, where's the opportunity? So we wanted to really pitch ourselves about, 20-30% cheaper than fitness first, more affordable, more accessible, and so that we could actually have those people that say that perhaps couldn't quite afford to go to that, to be able to access some kind of, good quality health and fitness offering, maybe for the very first time in their lives. And it was just at a time that obviously, gym was becoming a real, it was almost like a status symbol, people wanted the membership, they wanted to feel that they were part of that world. So yeah, we really capitalized on that, and we're able to get that. So I think, to be fair, I can't really remember like a harsh competitiveness. There's plenty of populations to go around in Asia. So I think it was more about just carving out a different part of the market that they were perhaps not serving so well.
Mm. And why do you think that business probably didn't go on to be like a Fitness First or a Virgin? What do you think they, in retrospect, without sort of saying anything that you probably can't or shouldn't or don't want to do, but is there any things that if you kind of again you could have, maybe even in your position you could have probably done slightly differently?
Yeah, look, I think for me personally, I was never going to be in Asia for a long time. I had dragged my daughter through South Africa. Obviously, going into Malaysia, she was still quite young. She was 5 or 6 at the time, or 6 or 7. And, she wanted to ride a bike on the street, and she couldn't do that in Malaysia either. So, we were never going to be there for a really long time. But I think from the business's perspective, it was probably less to do with what was happening in Asia and a bit more to do with how the company was structured elsewhere overseas. I think it was Pure Jitomi was the brand that they had in Poland, and I think there were some challenges in other parts of the business that were just impacting into the growth opportunity that was really in Asia. So look, I think the fitness market in Asia is incredibly buoyant. With jets. We went into, we're not in Malaysia, but we are in Thailand, and we've just gone into Vietnam. It's been phenomenally successful. I think about, Mike Lam, who's the CEO over in Thailand. He's gone in with an offering which I think he really understands. He's got great understanding of the customer over there, and have some great locations. And we've got just over 25 clubs there, and 20 of them are in Bangkok. We haven't even had to get out of the city. So it's the opportunity's always been there. I don't think that's anything to do with it, but perhaps some of the capital structuring and some of the challenges overseas have perhaps impacted the opportunity for Jitomi over in Asia.
Yeah, and I guess you see a lot of chains, and you're one of them. They'll start either in somewhere like America or in England or even Australia, and they'll eventually expand into new markets and take on other areas, and that whether they're operators or people selling equipment and what have you. You've seen that a lot. You've been leading a lot of expansion. What are some of the, I guess, key, because you can also royally mess it up very easily and just burn in a big ball of smoke. What are some of the things now that you think that are important to consider before going into new markets, and particularly in Asia, where, as you say, there's a huge amount of opportunity. There's no doubt about that, but there's a lot of risk that comes with it. So how do you sort of assess and mitigate that before saying, right, we're going to go here, and let's convince our investors to make these types of moves?
Yeah. Oh, look, things are very different now to how they were, 15, 20 years ago. I think I remember back at Fitness First, because, obviously we were just in the UK, then we went into, 12, I think, different countries in the end. I think Mike's strategy was land and expand. We could almost just land anywhere and buy a chain or something, or start up ourselves. And before we knew it, we were dominant. So, that was back when the industry was immature, but, you can't do that now. It's so first and foremost, you have to do your research. You have to be looking, we do a lot of research into different countries and which ones are the best for us. And it's not necessarily just the best for a fitness offering. It's, it has to be best for our model. And obviously, we're 24-hour. We are, good, low cost. We are, we don't do contracts. So, we're looking for different cultural elements around, how do people feel about contracts? What's the rest of the competition doing before we'd actually, go into a market? So yeah, massive amounts of research. And then when you're actually chosen the countries that you want to go into, you have to get in and, it's all about the property. It's all about getting the right kind of lease deals and locations that, is the bread and butter of the fitness industry. And for me, that means that you have to get, your most senior person needs to be somebody who understands that market and has good contacts, and especially in the kind of development side. So, is able to go and find locations and get those good sites going. Because, we all know that when you start up in a country, how successful your first handful of gyms are is critical to the development and growth of the rest of them. So it's, but yeah, you mitigate that by having knowledge on the ground.
Yeah, and I guess when you have investment within the business, there's clearly pressure to perform and grow and expand. As a CEO, how do you manage your, I guess, investors by doing that? You've obviously built up a huge amount of experience, and how do you balance the pressure of thinking big, wanting to grow the business significantly, but also not moving too quickly?
Yeah, easier said than done, that's for sure. I think it's, it doesn't matter whether it's your development in a new country or it's just basically a turnaround of an organization. Everything from a CEO's perspective starts with managing the expectations of whoever it is that you're doing this for. So, for me, wherever I land as a role, the first thing I do is I sit down and obviously get very clear on what it is that they've brought me in to do. And they say that could be a cultural turnaround, that could be a performance turnaround, that could be developing, growing in a new country. And it's a negotiation. At that point, everything's a negotiation. So I have to negotiate. And what I usually do, and I used to do this with Mike quite a bit because, I obviously worked all over the world for him, is I would say, okay, so this is what you're wanting, but I'm telling you that things are potentially going to get worse before they're going to get better. And, because you're going to all know that as soon as you make change, then performance can dip. So it's just about managing some of those expectations and saying that, either don't look at this thing for the next 6 months and just give me that time to be able to get the change that I need to build that platform for success. Or it's about, managing and their expectations around, what the growth profile is going to look like. That, look, we're going to open 2 gyms this year. We're going to, make sure that we understand the concept. We're going to refine it. And then after that, we're going to open them at a rate of X amount per year. But I think quite often CEOs forget to do that. They get quite caught up in the vision and wanting to deliver the results that they forget that you have to manage, carve out a space, and you have to carve out that expectation, whether it be with your board or your investors or your report line, and and make sure that you do that thoroughly and that it's documented because there's going to be times that you're pulling that out, going, I know that you want more right now, but this is what we agreed.
Yeah, good lesson there. What about the changing of the product? So over your 20-30 year career, there's been the sort of mid-market, which you've been involved in. There's been the low cost that you've been involved in. You're involved in a franchise. There's a number of different models, and the industry's ever evolving. And so how do you, as a leader, kind of keep your eye on the ball, saying, look, there's, say for example, the low cost is something that's coming in, and when you weren't doing that, how do you sort of identify it and then figure out how to, if you need to, if your business needs to move in another direction, say for example, the boutiques come along, and how do you keep an eye out for those models, particularly the ones that could end up disrupting your current model, and then sort of moving potentially, if you need to, your business in another direction? Because I guess some people can can sort of go from one to another and just, you know, totally screw up what they've got currently. So you can move too soon, you can move too slow, you can not do it in the correct way. What's been your lesson of sort of keeping in front of the trends without sort of losing relevance and losing to competition?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and you know, it's something we wrestle with all the time. You know, our industry in particular, I don't know, in some ways it's, you know, there's been radical innovation and radical change, and in other ways we still got treadmills. You know, we had those 30 years ago, so you know, some things really haven't changed at all. So I think for me, you know, I have to be relevant to the brand that I'm running at the time. And, you know, obviously Virgin Active and its expectation around innovation was very different to perhaps what Jets is. So you have to remember, it's not about me, it's about what the brand needs. So, you know, obviously within Virgin Active, you know, there was an expectation with the Virgin brand that innovation was something that we were leading. So, you know, strategically, you know, we worked hard to be across, you know, what's trending, what's happening all over the world. You know, we'd spend a lot of time going out, we'd have a fund for that. Whereas, you know, I guess with Jets, and, you know, we've had, you know, obviously a lot of boutiques have opened up in Australia. You know, we're certainly not bleeding edge. We're not even cutting edge. We are second across the bridge. So we generally wait and we see things come in, and obviously like F45 obviously has been a big innovation to the industry over here, and you know, has also had immense kind of growth. And you know, we do the usual things. Obviously we've all been a member of F45, we've done it, we know intimately what that product is all about. But for a number of years we chose not to do anything with it because we just wanted to see what's sticking. You know, we can never do fad. You know, we don't have deep pockets to be able to do innovations, perhaps like we did at Virgin. We need to see actually what's going to stick for the member, what's going to be around for the long term, and what actually fits within the kind of purpose and values of what the organization's all about. And, you know, we have to put it through those filters before we'll go, yes, this is something that we're going to invest in and we're going to create ourselves. So, I mean, for us, you know, I mean, if your head gets turned for every shiny thing that you see at a fitness show, you're going to be spending a lot of money and turning your members inside out on on all those different offerings. So for us, you know, we do have like you know, a HIIT training product, a team training product that we've put into Jets. We put that in a couple of years ago because we could see that there was a real desire for our members to have that offering, and but equally it had to run through our values. So we needed to do it where it was, you know, cost effective for our members. You know, they wouldn't pay $60 a week for that. We had to do it in a cost effective way, which meant that we needed to innovate a different way of doing it and delivering it. So yeah, I think it's just, you know, from a leader's perspective, it's knowing what's relevant innovation for your own brand. Obviously, we always have to stay across what's happening. And, you know, with my international network, that's quite useful to chat to people all the time and see what is happening. But, you know, don't have your head turned for every new shiny thing. It's at the end of the day, you know, what members want, what they pay for, what they care about are results. You know, how they get there, obviously, they're interested in. But we can never lose sight of that. You know, if it's not sustainable, whether it be financially or from a time and attendance point of view, if they can't stick to it, they're not going to do it long term. And if they don't enjoy it, they're not going to refer other people to do it. So all those basic principles stay in place, regardless of what it is that, you know, gets them the result.
Yeah, you use the word brand quite a bit there, and working for Virgin, I guess they're compared to the fitness industry brands, they're on a different level, different class already. They truly understand what that means, and they've been very successful at applying it to many different industries. What would be one of the lessons that you've learned from being involved in Virgin, and has that shaped how you now look at brands with some of the, you know, particularly where you are with Jets? Do you look at brand differently because of what you learned from Virgin?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it was an incredibly valuable lesson being a part of the Virgin brand, because you start to understand how it happens. You know, the thing that used to always just blow my mind about Richard is, you know, how do you get that one brand and then you do it across so many vastly different industries, airline to fitness to weddings to wine. It didn't really make any difference. And I've definitely taken those lessons and I've instilled that into Jet. So the things that I learned from Virgin was that you have to be very, very clear of what your brand is. Equally, you have to be very clear about what your brand isn't. So, that has to be distilled down, and then it has to be educated into every single person. And, that is a process that we've gone through now at Jet. So, we're very clear, what our values are, what our vision and our mission and our purpose, and the story that comes with the organization. The founder's story for me is really important. I don't think it's something that can just be erased as soon as a new leader takes over. You have to respect the heritage of an organization and where it's come from, because it's like a person, it's like a personality. And I think that has to be preserved and strengthened so that that's the brand that takes you into the future. So I think sometimes what happens with people is, they want to put their own stamp on an organization, and they'll want to recreate it. You hear about people, leaders come in and, we're going to do a values workshop. We're going to, recreate the values. Well, you can't, it's like once something's been born and it's been created, it's actually got those values. And that's what Richard did with Virgin. Every single Virgin business held the same values, and he held those up in high regard, and he was the leader of those values. And his high expectations that those lived and breathed in every organization, and it was inspected. There were surveys done, and there was inspections done by Virgin management to make sure that those were in place. So I think when you approach your brand with that much rigor and that much authority and respect, it's gonna live on and be very strong, especially when it's up against other organizations that just don't get that, or don't know what it looks like, or have this tendency to change it all the time, because that just makes it weak. Yeah.
So coming on to Elaine, then, you're obviously you're always very energetic and extremely driven. What is some of the rituals and habits in your life that allow you to be a high performer and juggle lots of things and continue to bring that energy to whatever you do, whether that's sort of fitness, whether that's recovery? What are some of the key things that are really important that you've done to keep you in the best possible mental and physical shape?
Yeah, look, we have to walk our talk, don't we? Especially in this industry, it's a bit of a pressure on. People expect it of you. I actually, early on in my career, I was heavy in sales. I was in sales management for many, many years, and I was a salesperson for a good, 7 or 8 years. I sold thousands of memberships, and I was really grateful for that time, because I think when you work in sales, and especially in sales management, you're managing high performance teams. You start to understand the impacts of somebody's well-being on performance. You see it yourself. And you start to understand what it takes to be in that kind of high performance state. So I'm very grateful. I had a boss many, many years ago who, when I was managing a large team of people, of salespeople, we had this rock star year. We had an absolutely phenomenal sales year. And I can remember getting to the end of that financial year, and we really celebrated, and we were so proud of what we did. And I got into my office one day, and there was this envelope on my desk, and I opened up this envelope, and there was 2 tickets from my boss. He'd put in there 2 tickets to the Caribbean, all expenses paid. And I was like, wow, that's like amazing. I was so grateful. So I went running through to his office to say thank you to him. And I walked into the door, and he beckoned me in, and very stern face, and told me to sit down. And I was like, okay, I'm a little bit confused here, because he's just given me this great gift, and he's not looking very happy. And so I sat there and I said, I just wanted to come in and say thanks. And he kind of shut me up, and he goes, okay, so let's get one thing clear. He said, the reason I've given you that is because you need that more than anything else right now. He said, when was the last time you took a day off? And I said, it's probably been a while. And he said, well, when was the last time you took a holiday? And I was like, oh, it's a few months since I did that. And he goes, well, when was the last time you had a workout? And he said, I appreciate you've been driving the team. And he said, you've been driving yourself, and you've got these great results, but look at the state of you. You're tired, you're not as fit as you used to be. You've obviously, you've been out partying, and look at your team. Your team are in a pretty bad shape. They were all absolutely shattered, and we were starting a new year, and he said, look, you can't do that as a leader. You have to put yourself first. How can you possibly take care of all those people out there if you're a mess? And he said, the reason I've given you that gift is because you need it. You need to go and take a holiday. You need to go and sit on a beach and think about how you're going to do things better and different, so that when you come back, you can do this in a sustainable way and not in a way that just burns through people. So I think lessons like that of been able to have that introspection in my leadership of if I'm not feeling great, if I'm not looking after myself and working out and hydrating and leaving on time, then how can I possibly lead a team of people? So in fact, that guy, when I got to that Caribbean holiday, I'll never forget it. I walked into the hotel room, and there was a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of champagne. I thought, oh, I'm totally forgiven. And I opened up the card that was with the flowers, and it says, "Next time I'll fire you." So, and it was incredibly serious about this thing of looking after myself to look after my people. So that's where I learned that lesson. And I think with that, I've never looked back. And even now I've got a very high performing team here, and even now I have to keep reminding them that, look, it's okay to do the occasional late night, but you can't do it on the bounce. And we have to figure out to do less or to do things differently, because when it becomes unsustainable, that's when you're going to start losing people, and it affects the culture.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson, and it's something that I've learned recently as well, because I suppose if you are competitive and running a business, and I guess want to win at things, then you probably put in a lot more than you should do, and you don't know when to turn off and to say no. So it's one of the things I've found. Even now I have to sort of force myself to say, I'll finish and have that sort of relaxed recovery time, whether it's in my fitness or with mentally within my business. Do you find that now? Do you have that time where call it recovery or mental recovery, business or physical? That are you putting more time into that sort of part of your life? And if so, have you found that does make a big difference? Positively?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? I think you have to be. I understand my values hierarchy intensely, so I understand, how I'm going to make decisions when something has to give. So I've had to work hard to put health and kind of wellness higher up my own hierarchy of values, that it doesn't become the thing that gets compromised as soon as the pressure comes on. But equally, I'm kinder to myself now. So I will work out. I will plan to work out every day. And if for some reason I can't work out in that day, I'm okay with that. I'm okay that the next day I will work out. And even, as I say, this whole thing of just working out for 10 minutes is better than not working out at all. Even if it's, just going into a hotel gym for 10 minutes, it is better than nothing. And it's kind of retaining the habit as you kind of are gentler to yourself. So, I think, for me personally, as I've got older and I guess more mature, I do appreciate that I do need to stay on top of my health and fitness and lead from the front. But I used to be crazy running marathons and, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get my training in, because, I had to do it, and I was so goal driven on that stuff. So I have done less of that in more recent times, understanding that I have to have a balance of everything, and the balance of the family and the balance of having out time, because that's where your creativity comes from. So I'm probably a bit more candid to myself than I used to be.
So final question, Elaine. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you believed was impossible and gone on to make it possible. What would be a memorable example of escaping your own personal limits?
Well, I would probably relate that to, how do you get outside your own comfort zone? I can remember a time, and it was in Fitness First, when I think at that point I was running what I would believe was probably the most successful portfolio. We were riding high. We were, the darlings of the stock exchange and everything. We were effectively printing money. We couldn't open gyms fast enough. We couldn't make them any more successful. And it was, we were really riding that, wave of success. And I can remember there was a moment when they had this, we'd actually bought a chain of gyms in France. And these gyms had not performed as well as we expected, and it was really impacting. There was a bit of media exposure about it, and it was really impacting the I guess the stock exchange and the value of the stocks and the shares of the company. So I can remember being called to a meeting and being kind of told about this problem that we're having, and everyone was kind of sitting around, and it was all of the business leaders saying, what are we going to do about this? And somebody's got to go and fix this thing. Who's it going to be? We can have some volunteers. Who's going to go across and sort this out? And I can remember thinking, life could not have got any better for me at that point. And has great car, great life, living up in London. Couldn't have asked for more. But knowing in that moment that to be able to grow and develop, I had to get out of where I was because I was so comfortable. And kind of having that outer body moment of volunteering to take on this biggest challenge that they had in Europe. And saying, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I'll be the one that goes across, and I'll see what I can do and see if I can turn this around. And that was a pinnacle moment of my whole career, where I chose to do what everybody else in the room really did believe was impossible, and do what others weren't prepared to do. And that's been a bit of a mantra through my whole career. Is if there's something that looks impossible and something that they say can't be done, then I will be generally the first one to put my hand up to say, okay, I'll do it, because if I can do it, that's exponentially going to take me higher and further than anything else. And I did go to France and help sort that out, and we did get it turned around, and it gave me some valuable skills and lessons right in that those couple of years that I helped do that. And I became European sales director after that, and it really catapulted my own career. So yeah, it's good to do things which seem impossible, but what really is impossible at the end of the day.
Well, Elaine, thank you so much for your time. I am truly inspired with what you've done, and it's really come from a huge amount of graft and hard work and mistakes and picking yourself up off the floor and escaping your limits. So I wish you success in whatever the next challenges entail, and I appreciate you being on the podcast today. Thank you very much, Elaine.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.